The night sky above the Andes was clear and sharp. Stars shone brighter here than anywhere else on Earth, or at least that was what Myra always believed. She worked as a young radio technician at a small observatory far from the noise of the cities. While most of the world paid little attention to the endless hum of the universe, Myra loved to listen. The observatory was small, with only 3 researchers and a few students. Most nights were quiet, filled with the low whir of machines and the faint scratch of static on radio receivers. Myra often stayed late, staring at the flickering signals that bounced across her screens. She knew that most of them were just noise, random patterns from stars or far-off storms. But something inside her always hoped for more. It was near midnight when it happened. A strange pulse caught her attention. At first, she thought it was interference from a passing satellite. The signal was weak, uneven, almost like a whisper lost in the storm of space. She leaned closer, adjusting the filters, removing the background noise. The pattern became clearer, and her heart began to race. This was not random. The signal repeated in careful beats, rising and falling with precision. Myra's hands trembled as she recorded it, running it through the old decoding software. The screen filled with symbols, strange and alien, unlike anything she had seen before. It was not a natural source. It was a voice. She called for Professor Delgado, the head of the observatory. He was older, with gray hair and a mind filled with both wisdom and doubt. At first, he waved her off, saying she was tired and hearing things in the static. But when she played the recording again, his expression changed. His eyes narrowed, and for a long moment, he said nothing. "This is not a star," he whispered at last. "This is language." Myra leaned forward. "Do you think it's?" He raised a hand to stop her. "Do not say it yet. Not until we are certain." Together, they worked through the night. They filtered, recorded, and compared the signal against every known source. Nothing matched. It was not human. It was not natural. It was something else. By dawn, they had a string of decoded words. The translation was incomplete, broken, but the meaning was unmistakable. It was not a greeting. It was not a warning. It was sorrow. The words they could understand spoke of hunger, loss, and shadows closing in. The voice, if it could even be called a voice, sounded tired, heavy with despair. It was not asking for help. It was speaking like someone leaving their final message before the end. Professor Delgado sat back in silence, rubbing his face with his hands. Myra felt her chest tighten. She had imagined first contact would be exciting, filled with wonder and possibility. Yet what she heard now was different. It was raw and painful, like listening to someone cry in the dark. "Who would send this?" she asked softly. "Someone who does not expect an answer," Delgado said. "Someone who believes no one is listening." The thought chilled her more than the mountain air. Out there, beyond the stars, an entire people was dying. They had cast their words into the void, not to be saved, but simply to be remembered. Myra saved every fragment of the signal and stored it in 3 different drives. She could not let it be lost. Then she sat at the console, staring at the blinking lights. She wanted to answer, to tell them that someone had heard. But what could she say? What could one young woman on Earth possibly offer to an entire alien race at the edge of extinction? Delgado put a hand on her shoulder. His voice was calm but heavy. "We must take this to someone who can understand it better. This is bigger than us." She nodded, though doubt remained in her heart. Would anyone believe them? Most people laughed at the idea of alien signals. Even if governments took it seriously, why would they care about strangers so far away? Humanity had its own problems, wars, and hunger. Yet Myra could not shake the feeling that the words she heard were not meant to disappear into silence. The next day, Delgado contacted an old colleague, Dr. Harris, an astrophysicist in the capital city. He had spent years studying unusual radio signals, often mocked by other scientists for chasing ghosts in the static. If anyone would believe, it was him. Myra carried the recordings herself, holding the small drive as if it were the most important object in the world. As the bus rumbled down the mountain roads, she looked up at the sky again. The stars did not feel distant anymore. Somewhere out there, beyond light years of darkness, voices had spoken their last words. And against all odds, she had heard them. For the first time, Myra understood that the universe was not silent. It was filled with stories, with lives struggling just like hers. And now, one of those lives had touched Earth. She did not know what would come next, but deep inside she knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had been given a choice to listen and do nothing, or to listen and act. And Myra, sitting alone with her thoughts, already knew what her choice would be. The city felt too loud after the silence of the mountains. Myra held the small drive tightly in her pocket as she walked with Professor Delgado through the busy streets. Cars honked, vendors shouted, and people hurried past without a glance. No one around her knew that inside her pocket rested the voice of another world. They arrived at the university where Dr. Harris worked. The building was old, with cracked walls and dusty halls. Harris was waiting for them in his office, surrounded by stacks of books and papers. He looked tired, but his eyes lit up when he saw the drive in Myra's hand. Delgado wasted no time. "We believe it is a transmission. Something not of Earth." Harris frowned, almost amused. "You came all this way to tell me that?" He had heard too many false claims before. But when Myra plugged the drive into his computer and played the recording, his expression changed. The room filled with the strange, broken rhythm of the alien message. For a long time, Harris said nothing. He only leaned closer, listening as if every pulse carried weight. When it ended, he whispered, "This is real." He ran the signal through his own decoding software, more advanced than the one Myra used. Slowly, pieces of the alien language shifted into words humans could read. The translation was rough, but clear enough to understand the tone. It spoke of hunger, of skies turned black, of enemies pressing closer. Myra read the words on the screen and felt a chill spread through her. "They are not asking for help," she said softly. "No," Harris agreed. "They think no one will answer." The three of them sat in silence, the hum of the computer filling the room. Delgado finally spoke. "We must tell the government. Something this important cannot be kept in a drawer." Harris shook his head. "They will not believe us. And if they do, they will try to lock it away. They will say it is a trick or a trap." Myra clenched her fists. "But we cannot just ignore it. Someone out there is dying." Harris turned to her. His voice was calm but firm. "And what do you think we can do? We are a single world, still struggling with our own problems. Do you think the leaders of Earth would risk resources to save strangers we have never met?" Myra hesitated. She had no answer. She knew Earth was divided. She knew people would ask what profit there was in helping. But the words of the aliens echoed in her mind, heavy with despair. She could not stand the thought of turning away. "Even if they do not ask for help, even if they believe no one will come," she said, "shouldn't we prove them wrong?" Harris studied her, and a small smile touched his lips. "You remind me of myself when I was younger." Over the next days, they worked together, feeding more of the signal into Harris's programs. Piece by piece, the alien language unfolded. It was complex but full of rhythm, like poetry. The more they decoded, the clearer the picture became. The senders were called Thilren. Once they had lived on lush worlds with rivers and forests. But an enemy they called the Dreeksar had destroyed much of their home. The Dreeksar starved them by burning crops, poisoned their skies with smoke, and hunted their ships in space. The Thulren had fought, but their strength was nearly gone. The message was not a call for rescue. It was a memory. They wanted anyone to know they had existed, that their struggle had not been meaningless. It was the last song of a dying people. One night, Myra and Harris sat in the empty lab, staring at the decoded lines on the screen. "Do you ever wonder why we heard it?" she asked quietly. "Out of all the billions of stars, why did their voice reach us?" Harris leaned back, thoughtful. "Chance, maybe. Or maybe the universe wanted someone to hear." Myra smiled faintly. "Then maybe the universe chose the right ones." But outside the quiet of the lab, the world reacted differently. When Harris presented the findings to a small group of officials, most of them dismissed it. Some laughed. Others grew nervous and whispered of danger. A few warned that answering could bring war to Earth. Delgado grew frustrated. "Do you not understand? This is proof we are not alone. This is proof that we can make contact." But the officials only shook their heads. To them, it was either nonsense or a risk too great. The meeting ended with no agreement. The recording was marked as classified, and they were told to hand over the drives. Harris refused. He had spent too many years searching for this moment to let it vanish into locked drawers. When the officials left, he turned to Myra and Delgado. "If the leaders will not act, then we must." Myra's heart raced. "How?" "By telling the world ourselves," Harris said. "Let the people hear the Thulren. Let them decide if silence is the right answer." That night, Myra uploaded a portion of the decoded message onto the internet. She did not add her name, only the words of the Thulren, translated into human language. She ended it with a single line: "We are not alone. Someone needs us." At first, few believed it. But as the recording spread, more and more people read the sorrowful message. Some dismissed it, but others felt the same chill Myra had felt. For the first time, millions of humans thought not just of themselves, but of strangers far away who had already given up hope. And somewhere in the vast darkness, the Thulren's message had finally found its way into human hearts. The message spread faster than anyone expected. At first it was shared only by a few curious people on science forums, then journalists picked it up, and soon entire news networks were speaking of the strange voice from the stars. Some called it a trick, others called it a miracle. For many, it was the first time they thought of intelligent life beyond Earth as something more than a dream. Myra stayed up night after night watching the reactions. Videos, posts, and messages flooded the internet. People translated the words of the Thulren into every human language. Students held discussions in classrooms. Families spoke of it over dinner. Even those who doubted its truth admitted the message carried a deep sadness. It was too human in its sorrow to be ignored. But not everyone felt compassion. Some argued it was dangerous. If the Thulren existed, then so did their enemies. What if Earth drew their attention? What if helping meant bringing war to humanity? Governments debated in secret meetings. Some wanted to shut down all discussion and keep the message hidden. Others suggested waiting, watching, and doing nothing. In a hall filled with advisors and generals, one leader spoke firmly: "We are not ready to interfere in wars beyond our world. We cannot waste resources on distant strangers." Another leader replied: "But if they are real, then turning away makes us cowards. Do we not call ourselves defenders of life and freedom?" The arguments circled without end. Meanwhile, ordinary people across the globe were already making their own decisions. Groups of scientists formed coalitions online, sharing ideas on how to respond. Engineers discussed building transmitters powerful enough to send a reply. Farmers and workers wrote messages of solidarity, saying they would give food, labor, anything if it could reach those suffering stars away. Myra watched all of this unfold with a mixture of awe and fear. She had not expected such a reaction. She thought maybe a few curious minds would care, but now it was the whole planet. For the first time, she felt the weight of what she had done. Professor Delgado reminded her, this was never about us alone. Once truth is given to people, it no longer belongs to a few. It belongs to all. One evening, Harris gathered Myra and Delgado in his small office. He looked more determined than ever. The leaders will not act unless forced. But the people have already spoken. We will not wait for permission. Myra tilted her head. What do you mean? Harris opened a file on his screen. It showed plans for a prototype fusion drive ship, a project developed by several nations but never tested beyond Earth's orbit. Private companies had been working on it, dreaming of fast travel between planets. With adjustments, it could reach other stars. We have the design, we have the drive, and we have the will, Harris said. If governments will not send a mission, then we must create one ourselves. A ship of volunteers, not soldiers. A ship that carries not conquest, but hope. Myra's breath caught. The thought of leaving Earth, of crossing the stars, had always seemed like fantasy. But now, when lives depended on it, it felt real. Delgado frowned. It will not be easy. It will take money, resources, and trust. Then we will gather them, Harris said. Do you not see? This is the first chance in history for humanity to prove what it stands for. We are no longer only Earth's people. We are listeners in the dark, and now we must answer. News spread that scientists and volunteers were planning a mission. At first, critics called it impossible. Yet donations poured in from citizens across the world. Engineers offered their skills, doctors promised their knowledge, and pilots lined up to join. The governments, seeing they could not stop it, finally gave cautious approval. Some believed it would fail, but they also knew they could not stand against the will of billions. Slowly, the project took shape. The ship was named Aurora, after the light that breaks the darkness. It was not the largest or most advanced craft ever built, but it was fast and carried the best minds Earth could offer. Nations that had once been rivals now worked side by side to prepare it. For the first time in human history, the world united not against each other, but for someone else. Myra was chosen as communications officer. Delgado remained on Earth to continue decoding more of the Thulrans' language, while Harris would lead the science team on the ship. When Myra received the news, her heart pounded with both joy and fear. She thought of her family, of the mountain skies she loved, and of the unknown stars waiting ahead. On the day of the announcement, Harris stood before a crowd of reporters and citizens. Cameras streamed his words to every corner of Earth. His voice was calm but strong. We do not know the Thulran. We have never seen their faces. But we have heard their sorrow. We know what it means to face extinction, because our own history carries scars of near endings. And if we do nothing, if we let their voice fade into silence, then we betray not only them but ourselves. Humanity has always been at its best when it chose to help, when it chose to fight for more than survival. Now, across the stars, someone is waiting. And we will answer. The world erupted in cheers and doubt alike, but the path was set. Humanity had made its choice. Against fear, against distance, against every reason to stay silent, they would act. And so, while the Thulran huddled in the ruins of their worlds believing no one could hear, the people of Earth began building the ship that would carry hope across the stars. The ship Aurora stood on the launch field like a silver spear pointed toward the sky. It was not the largest ship humanity had built, but it was the fastest, powered by the new fusion drive that promised to carry them farther than any mission before. Around it, workers moved with hurried steps, checking every system again and again. The entire world was watching. Myra stood with her small travel bag, staring at the ship she would soon call home. Her heart raced with excitement and fear. She remembered the night she first heard the Thulran's sorrowful message in the observatory. She had not known then that her life would lead here, to this moment. Dr. Harris walked beside her, his face calm but his eyes alive with determination. "This is history," he said quietly. "No matter what happens, the world will remember this day." The crew of the Aurora came from many nations. There were scientists, engineers, doctors, and pilots. Each had left behind families and homes to join the mission. They were not soldiers, but explorers carrying hope as their weapon. Myra felt a strange unity among them, as if borders and flags had faded, leaving only one identity: human. When the countdown began, silence fell over the field. Around the globe, billions of people watched their screens. The engines roared, fire lit the sky, and the aurora lifted from Earth with a thunder that shook the ground. Myra held her breath as the blue planet shrank behind them. Inside the ship, everything hummed with life. The crew worked quickly to secure systems, check navigation, and adjust the new drive. Myra sat at her console, headphones over her ears, scanning the endless static of space. She knew the Thulren were waiting somewhere beyond the stars, though they did not even know help was coming. Days turned into weeks. The Aurora crossed distances once thought impossible. The fusion drive glowed at the heart of the ship, pushing them faster than light had ever been crossed by human hands. For the first time, humanity was no longer limited to its own solar system. During the long journey, the crew learned more about the Thulren from the fragments of their message. Myra spent hours listening, decoding, and studying their language. Their words carried rhythm, almost like music. Harris often sat beside her, noting patterns, drawing connections, and helping shape a dictionary that grew each day. One evening, Myra played a recording of what they believed was a Thulren song. It was broken and incomplete, but the melody was haunting. The crew gathered in the common room, listening in silence. Even though no one understood the words, the feeling was clear. It was a song of loss, but also of memory, of holding on to something even when all else was gone. A pilot named Ravi whispered, "They sound like us." Myra nodded. "They are us. Just far away." The words spread through the ship, and everyone carried them in their hearts. The Thulren were no longer strangers, they were distant family waiting to be found. But space was not without danger. In the deep void, the Aurora faced storms of radiation, broken asteroids, and the long silence that pressed heavy on the mind. Some nights, Myra lay awake in her small cabin, staring at the ceiling and wondering if they would arrive too late. She imagined the Thulren already gone, their message nothing more than an echo of a people erased. The thought made her chest tighten, but each morning she rose again, ready to keep working. Harris often gave speeches to the crew, reminding them of their purpose. "We do not know if we can save them," he said one day, "but that is not the point. The point is that we are trying." For the first time, humanity is not fighting only for itself. We are reaching outward, giving instead of taking. That alone makes this journey worth it. As the Aurora neared the edge of its journey, the crew gathered on the observation deck. Before them stretched the system of the Thulren, a cluster of planets around a dim, fading star. The scanners showed ruined ships drifting, broken stations, and smoke rising from worlds below. The sight stole the breath from everyone. "They are still there," Myra whispered. She could see faint energy readings from the planet's surface. Life remained, though weak and hidden. The ship slowed as it entered orbit. Myra's hands shook as she opened the communications channel. She broadcast a simple message in the language they had built from the fragments. Her voice trembled, but her words were steady. "To the Thulren. We are humans, from a world far away. We heard your message. You are not alone. We came." For a long time, only static answered. The crew stood frozen, waiting. Then, through the speakers, came a sound weak, broken, but filled with disbelief. "You came." Myra's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Harris, who gave a single nod. Against all odds, the Thulren had heard them. The silence between two civilizations had been broken. For the first time in their long suffering, the Thulren were no longer alone. The voice that came through the speakers was faint, almost trembling. Myra leaned closer, her heart pounding. She repeated her words slowly in the Thulren language, making sure each syllable was clear. "We are humans. We heard your message. We came to help." Silence filled the ship. Every crew member on the Aurora held their breath, waiting for a reply. Finally, the voice returned, soft and full of disbelief. "No one comes for us. No one answers." Harris stepped forward and spoke calmly, his voice steady. "We are here now. You are not forgotten." The translator system struggled, but the meaning passed through. The line went quiet again, as if the Thulren could not accept what they had just heard. Myra imagined them on the ruined world below, huddled in shelters, wondering if the message they sent into the dark had somehow awakened ghosts. The crew began sending data, images of Earth, pictures of forests, oceans, and cities. They broadcast greetings in many human languages, then repeated them in the growing dictionary of Thulren words. Slowly, the reply came back stronger. "We see your oceans. We see your sky. You are real." Tears filled Myra's eyes. For so long, the Thulren had spoken only into emptiness. Now they were speaking to someone who answered. The Aurora entered a lower orbit. Scanners showed the remains of great cities' towers broken, rivers poisoned, fields turned to ash. Yet deep underground, faint energy signals marked where survivors still lived. Harris suggested sending a small team down first, to prove they meant no harm. Myra volunteered without hesitation. Ravi, the pilot, insisted on going too. Together with Harris, they boarded a shuttle and descended through the planet's broken skies. The air outside was heavy with smoke and dust. What had once been green was now gray and lifeless. The shuttle landed near the largest energy reading. Myra's hands shook as the door opened. She stepped onto alien soil, the ground cracked beneath her boots. The wind carried the faint echo of a world that had once thrived. From the shadows of a ruined building, figures appeared. They were tall, thin, with pale skin that seemed to shimmer faintly in the dim light. Their eyes were large, filled with both fear and wonder. They carried no weapons, only caution. Myra raised her hand slowly, showing she meant no harm. She spoke in the Thulren words they had learned. "We come as friends." The aliens did not answer at first. They studied the humans carefully, whispering among themselves in voices like soft wind. Finally, one of them stepped forward. His movements were slow, uncertain, as if each step was a battle with doubt. "You crossed the stars, for us." "Yes," Harris said firmly. "We could not ignore your message." The alien's eyes shone with something between sorrow and hope. He introduced himself as Iran, a leader of the remaining Thulren. His voice carried the weight of years of loss. "We thought we spoke to no one. We thought our words would fade into silence. Why would humans come?" Myra answered with the only truth she knew. "Because we could not let you die alone." For a long time, Iran said nothing. Then he lowered his head, a gesture that seemed like surrender and gratitude at once. "Then perhaps hope is not gone." The Thulren guided the humans into their underground shelters. Inside, Myra saw hundreds of survivors, weak, tired, but alive. Children clung to their parents. Elders sat with hollow eyes that lifted slowly at the sight of strangers who had crossed the stars. The humans shared food rations at once. To the Thulren, it was like a gift from another universe. They tasted it carefully, then their eyes widened with relief. It had been many months since they had eaten anything more than thin roots and bitter water. Harris showed them medical kits, simple tools to heal wounds and cure sickness. Doctors among the crew tended to the weak. The Thulren watched in silence, unable to believe strangers would give so much without asking for anything in return. Later, as Myra sat with a group of Thilran children, one of them reached out and touched her sleeve. His voice was soft but clear. "You are warm," he said in broken words. She smiled and held his small hand. "So are you." That night, under the dim light of underground lamps, the humans and Thilran shared their first true conversation. The language was broken, but laughter and tears filled the gaps. Stories were told through gestures and pictures. The Thilran spoke of their lost rivers and forests, while the humans shared images of Earth's mountains and seas. For the first time in years, the shelters echoed with something other than fear. Above them, the ruined world remained scarred, but below, in the heart of the survivors, a spark had returned. When the humans returned to the Aurora, Myra looked back at the underground shelters glowing faintly beneath the broken land. She knew this was only the beginning. The Thilran had opened their hearts just enough to let hope back in. And hope, once given, was stronger than any enemy. The first days after landing were filled with quiet learning. Myra and the crew worked tirelessly, helping the Thilran adjust to the humans' technology. The small shelters began to feel less like hiding places and more like homes. Simple comforts, fresh water, clean food, and medical care made a difference, but the real change came from what humans taught them. Harris led classes on farming and irrigation. Using simple tools and seeds from Earth, he showed the Thilran how to grow food quickly even in the ruined soil. Myra helped with communications, teaching them how to use long-range transmitters to contact each other across underground networks. Slowly, the Thilran learned that survival was possible. The Thilran were amazed. They had survived for months with little hope. Yet humans came not only to save lives but to teach them how to live again. Every night, they gathered around small lamps, talking, learning, and sharing stories. It was a strange feeling for the Thilran to meet beings who did not demand anything in return. One day, as the humans checked the surrounding skies, scanners picked up the Dreeksar fleet returning. It was larger than before, and this time, they were prepared to finish what they had started. Panic spread through the Thilran shelters. Many believed they could not survive another attack. Harris stepped forward, calm and commanding. "You will not fight alone." Myra watched as the humans began organizing the Thilran into a defense plan. Pilots trained on Earth crafts showed the Thilran how to operate their damaged ships and defend them. Engineers worked alongside Thilran mechanics, combining technology in new ways. Food, energy, and medicine were shared efficiently. Every person had a role, every person mattered. Aran, the Thilran leader, approached Myra quietly. "We are weak," he said. "Even with your help, can we win?" Myra looked at him with steady eyes. "Strength is not just weapons. Strength is courage, unity, and hope. You have that. And now, you have us." As night fell, the Dreeksar ships appeared above the horizon. Their dark shapes blocked the dim light of the dying sun. The Thilran's old defenses were ready to crumble. But humans, with careful planning and guidance, had prepared traps, shields, and countermeasures. The battle began quietly at first. Small drones and automated systems activated, surprising the Dreeksar. Then the Thilran ships, piloted by humans and trained Thilran, moved with precision. They were faster and smarter than the enemy expected. Humans and Thilran fought side by side, anticipating each other's moves without words, using signals and gestures. Myra stayed in the control room of the Aurora, coordinating communications and monitoring shields. Her hands flew over the panels, giving instructions, sharing energy to the ships that needed it most. Every small success brought hope, and every failure taught them something new. Hours passed, and the battle raged across the skies and broken cities. Slowly, the Dreeksar began to falter. They had not expected resistance from such a united front. One by one, their ships fell, either disabled or forced to retreat. The Thilren and humans pushed them back until at last, the Dreeksar were gone. Cheers erupted across the shelters. The Thilren who had doubted themselves now embraced humans with tears of joy. Children ran through the streets that were once dangerous, laughing freely for the first time in months. Elders lifted their heads, realizing that their people had survived because someone had chosen to care. Harris turned to Myra and smiled. Look at them. We did not just save them from death. We saved their future. Myra nodded, her eyes reflecting the lights of the shelters below. She had never imagined that humanity could reach so far and make such a difference. The Thilren had been ready to give up, yet through courage, skill, and care, they had been shown a new path. Aran approached the Aurora and bowed respectfully. You did not come for glory or reward. You came because you could not ignore our cries. For that, our people owe you everything. Myra shook her head. We do not need thanks. This is what humans do. We hear, and we act. That is all. Above the planet, the stars seemed to shine brighter. The aurora floated silently, carrying humanity's hope across the void. Below, the Thilren were no longer hiding. They were building, learning, and preparing to thrive. For the first time, both species realized that survival was not enough. Together, they could live, create, and even flourish. The Dreeksar threat had been stopped, but more importantly, a bond had formed. A bond between humans and the Thilren that no enemy could break. Myra stood on the observation deck, looking at the horizon. The journey that began with a faint signal had led them here. The Thilren were alive, their hearts filled with hope, and humans had proven that compassion and courage could cross even the farthest stars. And in that moment, she knew the galaxy would never be the same again. The battle was over, but the work had only just begun. The Thilren were no longer hiding underground. Their eyes lifted to the sky, seeing the stars not as threats but as paths to hope. Myra and the crew of the Aurora stayed beside them, guiding the rebuilding of cities and communities. The once ruined fields began to bloom. Harris worked with Thilren engineers to create new water systems. Small machines carried clean water to dry lands, while seeds from Earth grew alongside local plants. Slowly, green returned to the gray planet. Children ran through newly sprouting fields, laughing freely for the first time in generations. Aran, the Thilren leader, walked among his people every day. He saw the strength returning in their steps and the light returning to their eyes. He would often stop and watch humans and Thilren working together, sharing knowledge and stories. The lessons were simple but profound. Earth technology and Thilren wisdom combined could restore more than cities, they could restore hope. Myra spent her days teaching communication systems. Long-range transmitters connected scattered Thilren settlements. The Thilren began to send messages to each other and even to other friendly species nearby. The walls of silence that had trapped them for so long were gone. At night, Harris and Myra would stand on the observation deck of the Aurora, watching the Thilren lanterns glow across the settlements. We did not just save them from death, Harris said softly. We showed them that life is worth fighting for. We showed them that someone will come if they call. Myra nodded. It feels bigger than I imagined. They are not just survivors. They are alive, learning, and growing. And we help them see that. Aran approached them quietly, bowing his head in respect. You have done more than we could have hoped. You came without demand or reward. You gave us life when all seemed lost. Harris smiled. Humanity hears those who call for help. That is all. The Thilren began rebuilding cities that had been destroyed by the Dreeksar. Towering structures were repaired, streets were cleared, and homes were constructed stronger than before. Humans and Thilren worked side by side, blending techniques and materials. What was once impossible became possible because they faced it together. Even the young Thilren learned quickly. Children who had grown up in fear now played among the humans, sharing laughter and curiosity. Myra watched a small group attempting to fly a simple Earth glider, their large eyes sparkling with excitement. The future looked bright for a people who had almost given up hope. Months passed, and slowly, the planet transformed. Where smoke and ash had ruled, green forests now grew. Streams ran clear again, and the skies began to shine with a soft blue glow. For the first time, the Thulren could imagine a future without fear. Then, in a quiet ceremony, the Thulren built a monument. It was not a temple, not a statue of war, but a place to remember both loss and courage. Carved into stone were symbols for the Thulren who had perished and humans who had come across the stars to save them. It was a reminder that survival alone is not enough, living with hope is the true gift. Myra stood beside Aran, watching as Thulren children placed lanterns around the monument. The lights reflected in their eyes like tiny stars, symbolizing life, courage, and unity. "Do you think they will ever forget?" Myra asked. Aran shook his head slowly. "They will not. They will remember the humans who came when no one else did. And they will carry that memory forward. You have changed the course of our people forever." Harris placed a hand on Myra's shoulder. "And the story will not end here. Humanity now knows that the galaxy is listening. We heard a call for help, and we acted. Other civilizations may be out there, waiting. And we will be ready." The Thulren sang that night. It was a song of recovery, of life returned, and of gratitude. Myra could not understand every word, but she understood the feeling. It was joy, relief, and hope all at once. Humans joined in as best they could, adding voices to a melody that had traveled across the stars. The Aurora rested in orbit, a symbol of what humans and the Thulren had achieved together. Myra looked at the stars beyond and felt a sense of peace. A faint signal had once drifted through space, unnoticed by most of the universe. But humans had heard it. They had crossed the stars and given life, hope, and friendship in return. It was a beginning. Not only for the Thulren but for humanity as well. A new era had started, one where courage, care, and action could reach across the darkness and change the fate of worlds. Myra smiled. She knew that wherever the next call for help came from, humanity would answer. Because humans listened. Humans acted. And humans believed in hope. The galaxy, once quiet and cold, now felt alive with possibility.